Hello, well, welcome to this Early Careers Network webinar, which today comes from the Geodata Institute at the University of Southampton. I'm Andy Murdoch and I head up the AGI's Early Career Network. Before I introduce our speaker today, I just want to tell you a little bit more about the Early Careers Network for those who are new to it. The Association for Geographic Information's mission is to maximise the use of geospatial information and techniques for the benefit of business, government and the wider public. And ECN is a group within the AGI run by a small volunteer team, which importantly is made up of early career professionals who are actively engaged in the running of the scheme. Our aims are to build a community of early career professionals, to coordinate with our partner organisations to provide training, support and events such as this webinar, but also to help raise the profile of younger GI professionals and use our industry contacts to draw on experience of more seasoned colleagues who can provide mentoring and advice. Ultimately, our hope with ECN is that the industry will benefit from fresh perspectives and new ideas coming from the next generation of geospatial professionals, geographic information professionals. The scheme's aimed at people with less than 10 years commercial experience. So if you're not currently an ECN member, you can sign up for free if you're a full-time student, or through your company's point of contact if your organisation is already an AGI member. Otherwise, you can join as an AGI individual member for just £72, and where you'll get additional benefits such as discount at events and also access to the website, which has a range of resources such as past events and so on, papers and slides. So please sign up and help us grow the network by contacting ecn.org.uk or look at the website, which is www.agi.org.uk. Also, just to let you know about a couple of events. So we have Drinks both today, Southampton's FME World Tour, maybe a bit short notice, but also in a couple of days' time in Cardiff on the 14th of April. So hope to see you at Drinks there. We're also going to be at AGI Northern Ireland on the 11th of May, where there's a series of talks from people like Hexagon, Esri, Atkins, LPS, What Three Words, and Northern Ireland Water. So again, hope to catch up with folks over there. And just to let you know that the next webinar is on the 16th of May, and that features Charlie Glynn and Paul Naylor again, who are going to be getting a bit more technical with the cartography aspects, so guys from Ordnance Survey, and that will be hosted by Tim Newman, who's one of our ECN team. Finally, just want to point you towards the AGI Foresight report. Obviously, if you've registered for this webinar, you're interested in where GI is going, and I'd also encourage you to look at that, and you can download the report from the AGI website, and that gives a flavour of you know, the opinions of several geospatial professionals on what the challenges and future opportunities are. Okay, so now on to, so having seen Steven present various events over the last few years, and if you Twitter feeds, you'll I think it's fair to say is one of our industry's more outspoken individuals, and so we're delighted he's had time to share his thoughts with us today. He speaks from a position of authority, having held a number of senior positions previously as manager, general manager of GDC, but also as the MD and director of product strategy at MapInfo in the late noughties, and currently has a number of senior advisory roles with GME Exprodat and Aston Technology, among others. He's heavily involved in OSGeo and is chair of the Phospher-G conference, which is again held this year, which I'm sure we'll hear a bit more about soon. He's remained right at the cutting edge of GI technology over the years through his involvement with various startups, which he advises, mentors, and occasionally invests in, I believe. And I think this and his passion for geospatial make him very well placed to give us his view on the current GIS landscape, where things are heading, and the implications for careers. So keep your questions coming in via the Google Plus and to ecn@agi.org.uk. But for now, Steven, a very warm welcome, and over to you.
Thanks, Andy. Okay. Oh, there's a lot of echo. I thought I'd start by talking about careers rather than where the industry is going, and then gradually move into how the changes in the industry may affect people who are earlier in their career. So where I thought I'd start with is just comparing what I call first job and second job. Pretty obvious, really. if you're just coming out, and I'm assuming most people here are looking at second or even third jobs rather than first jobs, but if you are one of those people who is just about to graduate with a master's or something and you're wondering how to go about finding a job, a bit of a thought for you, which is think company, company, and company, or organization, organization, and organization. It doesn't really matter what the organization is doing, what the job is. I know you think the type of job's important. What really matters is what kind of an organization is it? Is it an organization that is going to give you opportunities? Is it an organization that has a clear career path and training? Even if you don't think you're going to stay there all your life or all your career or even for a few years, knowing that it is a company that trains people and provides opportunities is, in my opinion, the most important thing that you can be thinking about. The other thing that I find lots of people don't think about, and they regret this later on in their life, is, are you joining a fast growth company or organization? Without putting a downer on the whole of the public sector, it's certainly not the case at the moment that careers in public sector is going to be growing employment. Everything we know says public sector will be reducing employment. You might want to think about those kind of things even at the very beginning of your career. But moving on, and I'm now assuming that most of this audience is probably already in a job in GI, having left university with some kind of a qualification. I guess the question that I think you need to ask yourself is, what kind of work do you want to be doing? And I'd split that into three groups of people. The people who are doing GI, the people who are using GI, and the people who are being in GI. And let me explain a little bit what I mean by these terms. Doing GI is hardcore GIS. All of you who did some kind of a GI degree, either first degree or second degree, love using the tools, are convinced by the power of geography to provide insights and analysis, understand kriging and kerning and projections and datums and all of that kind of stuff. You love doing GI, and there's nothing wrong with this. Don't get me, I love this stuff as well. So, we all do. But those are jobs which will probably be 60, 70% of the time will be spent doing GI, right? And if that's what you want to do, you need to be clear about that. Then there's a group of roles which I think in the future are going to be incredibly important. And they're the roles where you're using GI rather than doing it. And what I mean by that is loads of career options which have GI as part of that career, but it's not the primary function. So it could be planning or resource allocation in public sector. It could be something in retail to do with allocating store networks, planning store rollouts. It could be demographics analysis for a consumer-facing service. It could be any of those kind of things. And GI is clearly an important part of that, but it's very far from the whole of it. And there are probably more opportunities in that area than there are in the hardcore doing GI space that I was talking about just before. And then the third type of role are those roles which are being in GI. And I guess what I'm talking about there are the consultancy roles, working in a management consultancy, The roles working in the GI industry. As an industry, we employ, I don't know, 5,000 people, maybe 10,000 people across the industry who are actually making the software, supporting the software, supporting users. They're roles, professional roles, which are in the used GI, but are more about facilitating other people's use of GI than they are about the actual hands-on practice of GI. And the reason that I've differentiated between these roles is that with the grey hair and the experience that I've built up, it seems to me that those roles take you into different places in an organization, different career vectors, perhaps we could call them, and certainly I think they're going to have potentially quite different financial outcomes. And I'm not suggesting that financial outcome is the only thing you should be thinking about in trying to plan a career, but I would be surprised and disappointed if it wasn't at least a factor for most of you. Just switching focus slightly, but still in the career thing, it always surprises me that people are maybe not as aware as they could be of where GI is used and where the opportunities are. So what I just thought I'd do is spit out, this may be obvious, but if it's not, it will help some people. In the public sector, well, there's an enormous use of GI. Probably more people using GI in the public sector than anywhere else. And that will extend from central government departments, environmental activities, through local government, through to defense, and of course the intelligence services. A lot of those roles will be pretty hardcore. There'll be the doing it roles, there'll be deep analysis. Some of them will be cartographic roles, map making roles, and all of those organizations have well-structured career progression for people working in that sector, in the GI sector. The challenge that I think you may find in the public sector is that the peak of the role may be running the GI team. How you transfer out of a purely GI role to a higher level management role, that may be something of a barrier that you hit later on in your careers. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It may meet your aspirations, but you can find yourself in a little bit of a corner in public sector and GI. In the private sector, utilities, anybody who has assets underground uses a lot of GI, and it's pretty technical stuff. Telcos do use a lot of GI, and also in the areas of sort of coverage monitoring and planning in 3G, 4G, and eventually 5G or whatever it'll be rollouts. Geography gets used a lot in that. The sort of growth sectors that I think have still got a lot of potential in them are retail. As retail finds itself having to balance online and physical retail, what some people call bricks and clicks, GI technology and the use of spatial awareness, people who understand location, is increasingly in demand, and people are getting smarter and smarter in how they use this stuff. I mean, we've gone from simple store, where do we put our next store, to much more sophisticated models that are starting to span the online and the offline worlds. And there's a lot of potential there, in my opinion, looking forwards. Insurance, I think we all understand that a lot of insurance risks are location-centric, but it still seems to be the case to me that insurance companies and those in the service sector supporting insurance are still growing their usage of GI technology, and that represents an opportunity for you in the early stage of your careers. But to a large extent, I think the area that people should be looking at are all of those new businesses that are starting to incorporate GI without even really knowing that they're doing it. I don't know, if I give you an example, and I'm not saying there's jobs there or anything of the sort, but if you look at somebody like Booking.com, right, a hotel booking, an online hotel reservation site, there will be a substantial bit of geotechnology going on in the background. You know, when you say you want a hotel, it shows you hotels and it organizes them geographically and it puts them on a map. It's probably not using GI technology in the way that you have learned to use it up till now, and it may well be making some compromises to present information to its users, but there is a vast amount of spatial data behind these organizations, and in the back office there are people working with that data, manipulating it, and I would encourage people to see these opportunities as the growth opportunities. The sectors we know about are well populated, jobs come up, they may be hardcore. The sectors that we don't know about are the ones that are evolving, and those jobs where people don't even realize they're using GI, I think represent great opportunities for you. Which leads me on to a subject, and back to the subject of money. And I say this because if we're talking about careers, money is pretty important. You know, it drives lots of people's career decisions. It's not the only one. And my friend Thierry Gregorius, and I hope this is going to work. No, it's not. Okay, I'll come back to that. My friend Thierry Gregorius, who some of you may know, and who is certainly somebody that's worth following on Twitter and reading his blog, he's written a really good piece about balancing the financial side of a career with the fact that this is stuff that you're fascinated with. And I think it's well worth reading, and whilst someone's asking questions or something like that, I'll find that link and I'll post it so that you can have a look at that. But I think that you know, one of the challenges that people in the early part of their career in GI face is that they love the technology and they love using it and they love what they can do with it, and they may not fully think through what that means in terms of their future earnings potential. And I would suggest to you that the more hands-on you are, the lower the lifetime earnings expectations you can expect. It's a sad fact that CEOs of very large companies earn 100, 200 times the lowest paid employees of those companies, right? CEOs of most companies, even the largest GI vendors and consultancies, tend not to be highly technical practitioners. I'm not suggesting that everybody wants to become a CEO, but I'm giving you that as an extreme. And I would suggest that whilst you want a life-work balance and you should want to enjoy what you're doing, In fact, you must want to enjoy what you're doing, because otherwise life is going to be miserable. And 40 years of doing stuff that you hate is a pretty horrible prospect to be looking at. You probably also have some aspirations to have a family, to have a home, and to have holidays and various other things. So you need to balance those things. And in that regard, I think people who use GI rather than people who do GI are going to have a better balance of the two. And that doesn't mean you don't start out doing GI. It means you do start out doing GI in an industry, but you're alert to the opportunities to actually develop your domain knowledge and your understanding about telco and telco site planning, or whatever it is that you find yourself doing with the GI, and gradually becoming more of an expert at telco planning, with GI being a tool that you use rather than a GI professional. In fact, I'll say something that lots of people will be shocked with. I don't believe there is such a thing as a GI professional. There is no profession. That's like saying, I'm a spreadsheet professional. I'm bloody good with spreadsheets, but I wouldn't put it on my CV. Certainly, I wouldn't call it my career. Yeah, I might become a finance director, and I'd use spreadsheets almost every day for a lot of the time, but that would be a tool that I use to do my job. It wouldn't be my job, right? And when we say we're GI professionals, I don't think there is a profession, and I would encourage you to see GI as the tool you use to bring spatial awareness to business and organizational problems, rather than a means in itself. And if I talk about moving from using it to being in it, the consulting roles, the business roles, the sales roles, the management roles, all of those roles push you up the salary vector. And you know, I'm not saying everybody wants to be there. What I'm just trying to expose is this thing that if you stay very hands-on, you're putting yourself in a corner. You're one of the backroom boys. You'll be wearing the white coat. You might even be wearing socks and sandals, God forbid. But you know, if you want to be, you know, sort of in some of the more exciting roles, you're going to need to think a little bit outside of that box. So I've been going on for longer than I thought I would, because I want to get to questions. So let me just give you some thoughts on what I think is going to change and how it might affect jobs very quickly. I think there's going to be less hardcore GI. I think there's going to be much, much more demand for spatially aware people. People who understand how to apply location to business problems. When I said I was doing this talk, somebody said to me, tell them they don't need to learn GI, they need to learn Python and JavaScript. I'm not technical enough to know whether Python or JavaScript or both is what people should be learning in a technical sense. But I think the point that was being made is that so much of the opportunity is about applying GI rather than doing it. And most of that will involve some technical skills which are not about projections and datums and queries and stuff like that, but is more IT based. And you know, for many of you, if you combine technical skills with GI, geography, spatial awareness, that will take you into the new areas that are just evolving, because most of those people will not be using the kind of tools that we've grown up with in the last 10, 20 years. It'll be hidden under the covers in some way. So My advice to you is to be spatially aware, not a GI professional, to think about the sectors that are going to grow and the sectors that are in decline, to think about the organizations which offer you growth opportunities and career development, to use GI, not do GI, and maybe to think about developing some technical skills that are more mainstream IT alongside your geographical skills. 23 minutes, bit over the top, but never mind.
That's great. Thank you very much for that. And you know, obviously, a lot of that chiming with sort of my experience as well. So you know, certainly, yeah, in terms of opportunities and so forth. But let's get on to the questions now. I know a few people have been struggling to log in. Fortunately, this has been recorded, and so hopefully those who haven't managed to get through can dial in later. But if I just take a couple of questions from email first, and then we'll go down through the list, if I may. So, from David Grant, as an early career professional, I often find myself struggling to decide on what areas to focus on for professional development. As GI covers such a wide knowledge base, what areas do you believe will be crucial in the future and benefit my current work and future career?
Okay, well, I'm told it's Python and JavaScript, Andy.
Yeah.
Or David. I think if I was going to give advice as to what skills should you develop, I would be encouraging people to explore some kind of programming, coding skills. Right? Starting with Python is a really good way to start. You know, as far as I know, and someone will correct me if I've got this wrong. You know, you can do some coding in Python and use it in the ArcGIS environment. You can certainly use it in the open source environment. It's a really powerful scripting language. I'd start doing some of that. You know, if you want to do some web presentational stuff, I'd start doing a little bit of JavaScript. I really think if you want to develop your career, you probably need to get off the desktop tools and onto the server, and that means building some technical skills to go along with your geographic skills.
Yeah, I certainly echo that, and I think you know, given the changes that I've seen over the years I've been involved in geospatial, you know, the languages change, so inevitably you're going to have to keep up and adopt. But currently, I would agree that Python and JavaScript are the flavour of the month, as it were. But for how long, who knows? Yeah,
but I think the key point is that when you come into this profession, this so-called profession, you come into it via the desktop. If you want to make a career out of it, you're going to have to migrate to the server, right? And that means learning the languages of the server rather than the interfaces of ArcGIS or QGIS.
Okay. All right. I asked one of our early career network team to sort of collate some questions via email previously. So this is from, well, but Steven, what's your background and how have you developed your career? So I gave a little bit of a description, but do you want to just elaborate a bit more on your history and how you've got to where you've got to now?
Okay. I hated geography at school. I was really lucky and I was able to drop it by the end of the 4th year of secondary school. I didn't do GCEs as they were in those days. I didn't do O-levels in geography. I dropped it at the first possible opportunity. By academic training, I'm an economist. I'm not a tech person at all, and I spent the first 20 years of my career in building materials, right, which is probably as far away from a career in tech and geo as you could imagine. And when I left, I ended up running a division of Pilkington, the glass manufacturers. And when I left them in the mid-90s, the only thing I knew that I didn't about my next career stage was that I didn't want to run factories with hundreds or thousands of people again. And I was lucky. A chance conversation took me to help somebody on a short-term contract in a GI business that was GDC, and that led to running part of GDC, running GDC. It led me into being in a .com in the period around the turn of the millennium, and the rest is sort of history. We bought GDC out from the .com in 2002 when they were struggling for cash, and it was just at the beginning of the government period. So there was a boom in the use of GI. We were there. I'm not certain that it was great planning. I think the only credit I'd take for our success was that we were very, very good at executing. And I think the reason we were good at executing was that it was just a business to us. It wasn't, we saw the value of GI and we were passionate about the value that we could bring, but we ran it like a proper business, I mean, it was straightforward, and when other people were flapping around trying to do things, we were delivering to customers and had a very successful period there. So the answer is I stumbled into GI, and from GI I stumbled into technology. It probably says you don't need a degree in geographic information sciences to build a career in the GI industry, but I'm sure it helps if you've got one.
Okay. Moving on to the next one. What excites you most about the GI industry at the moment?
Oh, what excites me most? It's all up in the air. I mean, the change and the transformation that we've had in the last decade. Google Maps was 10 years old a few weeks ago. I mean, I can remember when Google Maps launched. I can remember Yahoo Maps launching a few months before Google Maps. Not many people remember that Yahoo Maps even exists. In a decade, the industry has been transformed by Google. I'm trying to remember how old OpenStreetMap is. It's also coming up for about 10 years. And OpenStreetMap has just, I mean, if you had said 10 years ago that a group of people on bicycles and with mobile phones would map the world to a level that would be comparable with major commercial providers of data, people would have said, you're mad, it's impossible, it's never going to happen. But it has happened. If you had said 10 years ago, certainly 15 years ago, that most of, that billions of people would be doing something that was vaguely like GI, I wouldn't call it GI, on the internet every single day, you would have said, why? You wouldn't have even got to the point of questioning whether it was possible. You wouldn't understand why people would want to do that. So there's been colossal change. Before we talk about open source and open data, which are also colossal changes that are coming on. And I think part of this is the industry that we're in. the GI space, and part of it is the technology space. The pace at which technology is changing our lives is quite incredible, you know, and I consider myself enormously fortunate that I'm now a pensioner and I'm still involved in this stuff, and I understand it, or sort of understand it. You know, I mean, I think people who are, oh gosh, isn't that, oh, it stopped. People who, yeah, that's what happens in real life, the phone rings. You know, people who are 5 years older than me probably are just baffled and struggling with the pace of change. People who are a decade or two younger than me don't even really think that this pace of change is anything exceptional, because they don't know anything different. So I think the pace that we're changing is exciting. It throws up opportunities. You know, whole industries are being destroyed. We call it creative destruction, though I'm sure it doesn't feel very creative if you work in those industries. You know, if you worked in a travel agent business a decade ago, you've had to find a new career. You know, technology changes all sorts of things, and it will happen to the GI industry. You know, I mean, I could make predictions about what will happen in GI. Probably you're going to ask me something about open source later on, so I'll save that. So I think the change is exciting. I think it's throwing up opportunities. Oh, one other thing.
Yeah,
just one.
It's certainly difficult to keep.
Within another decade, we're probably going to have real-time remote sensed imagery, and more than just imagery, as commonplace data with it available to us. Yeah. I mean, you see the stuff on the spy movies where we can track the baddies as they're driving along and then the drones zoom in on them. That's not all fantasy, it's happening now. You know, I mean, you know, when you see those pictures and you know, you're in the Situation Room of the White House and the pictures come up and they're watching whatever activity is going on in real time. You know, that's not fantasy, that's happening now. It's not commonplace now, but it will be commonplace. And, you know, we'll be in a real-time, remotely sensed world, which will, again, be another transformational period. And location is absolutely at the heart of that. You know, understanding those relationships and those dynamics is going to be a whole new opportunity for us. So, you know, the change throws up opportunities as well as creating challenges.
Yeah, certainly things like Skybox, you know, are starting to sort of introduce that, and I guess you know, as more of those sorts of things become available, the cost will come down and be, you know, a lot more access. If you think about what's going on with the Sentinel data at the moment, and you know, the opportunities that people are clamoring around over that, I think, as you say, it's not so far off from real-time data.
And if you look at the emergency responses.
Next question, I suspect.
Sorry, I was just going to say.
Sorry, there's a bit of a delay on this.
Yeah, if you think about the way we respond to humanitarian disasters, you know, emergency response, you know, tsunamis and earthquakes and things like that. You know, the combination of near to real time imagery and crowdsourced interpretation of that imagery is transforming our ability to save lives and respond to these kind of events.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been unthinkable a decade.
Yeah, well, wasn't the Planet Labs? Yeah. The Planet Labs one, wasn't that supposed to be, you know, part of its mission was to provide that sort of humanitarian role, the new CubeSat doves or whatever they're called?
Yeah, I believe so. So
yeah, okay. So on to moving on to the next question. So I suspect I know the answer to this one, but open source or proprietary software, what's your view?
Okay, I'll surprise you maybe, because I think the answer to that is the best tool for the job.
Mm-hmm.
And that, and how do we define the best tool for the job? Well, the best tool for the job is the one that provides capabilities, reliability, and value for money, right? It's the whole life cost calculation, not just the headline cost. So because open source software has zero licensing costs, doesn't mean it's free. It has costs associated with its maintenance and support, the same as proprietary software does. So, you know, my initial answer is choose the best tools for the job. I think that if you now ask me to be a little bit more, put myself out there a little bit more, I'd say that in so many cases, open source is providing the best tools for the job. And over time, if you look at the pace of development within the open source community compared to the pace of development in a lot of proprietary software companies, it's probable that within a decade, most people will be choosing open source for general purpose, for general purposes. You know, I mean, if you want to serve maps on the internet, it's a commodity technology now, and open source works well in commodity spaces. I mean, if you look at Linux, virtually the whole of the internet runs on variants of Linux. It doesn't run on that favorite operating system that's produced by somebody in Seattle. Yeah, it's just, right, why are they doing that? Because actually we understand what you need from an operating system. Many eyes and many hands make light work. They fix bugs faster. There's a whole series of reasons why over time I think the collaborative model that is open source will gradually take a larger share of what I would call the commodity space. You know, if you look at on the desktop in the space that we work in, and I'm sure somebody here will go screaming mad when I say this, but it's a two-horse race at the moment. It's a two-horse race, and it's ArcGIS or it's QGIS, right? And in fact, when you did that survey, Andy, I don't know how long ago, a year ago?
Yeah, 6 months ago or so, yeah.
And you did that survey and you asked, a couple of hundred people responded, and you asked a question which was something like, which GI products do you have familiarity with, if I remember correctly, was the question, or words to that.
That's right, yeah.
And something like 90% of people responded that they had familiarity with ArcGIS, which is not surprising because many universities use that as the software that they teach techniques with. The second most familiar product for most people in the early careers network was QGIS. The other products, which I'm not going to list, all were a long, long way behind, you know, and it was very clear that it was down to the awareness and the usage and the skill set was focusing around these two products. And I think that that's only going to increase. And I think that when you look at the fact that QGIS generates 2, maybe 3 releases a year of incremental improvements, right? And you look at what comes into those improvements, and you look at the number of people that are working on that software, you you can see how it is going to keep accelerating. You know, there's absolutely no sign that the QGIS community is running out of steam.
Mm.
And there's a viable business model for the QGIS community because it's not free, right? Organizations sponsor features in QGIS. And if you go to my blog, and I'll try and find the link in a minute, I wrote a piece about the business model for QGIS and why organizations were sponsoring features that they needed and how that was accelerating the development of QGIS. So my view is that it is the best tools for the job, but over time, proprietary software will exist in slightly more niche, high-end areas, and the mainstream will be largely open source.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to take a question now from Finbar Gillen, and it says, I'm seeing more and more jobs are looking for GIS as a desirable requirement. Do you think this is the way GIS jobs are going to go? I guess that's kind of reflecting what you've said a little bit.
Yeah, I do, and I think I'd go one step further than that. I'd say if you're trying to make yourself marketable in the jobs market, GI will be a useful skill, but you need something else. You need to be able to, you need to focus on the other elements of your skill set, you know, your analytic capabilities, your presentational skills, your technical skills, you know, something. I certainly think that's the case. The other thing that hasn't happened yet, but that we might see, is the decline, if not the death, of the Masters in Geographic Information somethings, whether it's sciences, systems, or whatever. It hasn't happened, but it has been talked about. In parallel to that decline, you will see the creation of joint degrees in geology and GIS, or environmental sciences with modules in GIS. I mean, let's be honest, most people can gain a reasonable amount of facility with the tools and techniques that we use on a day-to-day basis in, I don't know, a couple of university modules. You know, it's not a full degree course in itself. It is if you get into some of the more arcane stuff, but if you wanted to be an environmental scientist, or you want to be a geologist, or you want to be a marine biologist, a module or a couple of modules in GI will probably get you to the place that you need to be. It will give you the skills you need. That bit that would constitute a knowledge of GIS is desirable. So,
yeah. Okay. And another one from Finbar. So he's saying, I'm a recent GIS graduate struggling to decide what route do you think would be best to go in terms of career stability and rapid progression? So again, you touched on that a little bit, but maybe you just want to pick up that a bit more specifically.
I don't think you can have stability and rapid progression, Finbar. You're going to have to make a choice, mate. If you want stability,
Okay.
what I would say is, you know, I think if you want rapid progression, you need to go into fast growth organizations.
Mm-hmm.
The very and this is nothing to do with GI. The very nature of a career path is that there is some kind of a pyramid, right? And there are a larger number of people lower down the pyramid than there are further up the pyramid. And the opportunities to get promoted to a more advanced and more senior role often tend to be dependent on somebody else leaving or being promoted. So faster growing organizations create more opportunities. Otherwise, you have to jump from one organization to another to find those opportunities. So my advice would be, if you want rapid career development, you have to look at organizations that are growing rapidly.
Okay. And on a similar line from Ruth, what advice would you give to students in their final year of university?
What advice would I give to? I would say, I repeat what I said, the very first thing I said, Ruth. Think company, company, and company. I mean, choose the company you want to work for, not the job you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you go and work for an exciting, fast-growing company that presents opportunities and has a good graduate intake program and a training program and all of that, your career will be developed faster and you will get a better base than if you go to a small, slow-moving organization which has a role for a GI technician. I don't want to name organizations or give beyond that, but I do think it's an important thing to have in mind. Look at the kind of organization that you're joining rather than specifically what the role is. You're going to change jobs in 2 or 3 years and you can do something different in 2 or 3 years' time. And it wouldn't even be the end of the world to get a great job with a good organization for 2 or 3 years that had virtually no GI in it. Do a bit of volunteering to use your GI skills with Map Action or something, and then take your next second job in a role that combines GI with some of the other skills that you've developed over the first 2 or 3 years. That might be a good route to consider.
Yeah, and just on that, one of the to provide opportunities for that sort of volunteering. So it might be sort of humanitarian OpenStreetMap type stuff, or some other community mapping projects that we can sort of get people to get a bit more experience if they find themselves perhaps outside of the area that they're currently in. Okay, so just looking down through the list of questions, and we kind of covered this as well, but biggest challenges you see for the industry now and in the future? I think we kind of covered that. What else have we got? Do you have any regrets, and what would you do differently? That's a good one. That's work regrets.
I think regrets no, I have no regrets. I try not to have regrets. I aspire to never regret what I've done because it's pointless. You can't go backwards. Would I have done things differently? Absolutely. Would I have done things differently? I would have loved to have been an academic, but I didn't. Chance, whole series of events. I'd have loved to have been an academic. I think no, I can't say I have any regrets. Had I done things more differently? When I left university in the 70s, nobody had a career plan. We didn't know. If you'd said, what's your career plan? We'd have said, what's that? We just did not think about that. We went off to do things, and very much we went to do whatever came up. because we were still of a mind that when somebody offered you a job, oh, that's great, I'll go and do that, right? Certainly, had I had a career plan, had I thought about some of the things that I was doing, I probably would have done very different things in the first 20 years of my life, and I don't know where that would have taken me. But as it is, it ended up with me being made redundant and getting into GI and the tech space. And I've been really happy in the last 20 years that I've been in this space. So I've got no regrets. I stumbled into the right place for possibly the wrong reasons. I guess what I'd have done differently is thought more about the organizations I was joining, which is the advice that I gave to you. And I probably also have tried to have been a bit better at the life-work balance than I have been.
Not easy, not easy.
Not easy, and particularly not easy when you enjoy what you're doing.
Sure. Okay. Do you want to just say something about the FOSS4G conference?
Oh, I'd love to, yes. On June the 14th, and I'll just try and talk and find the link for you and post the link in. Are those links appearing in the chat window, by the way?
They seem to be. I posted the first one from Thierry as well.
Okay. Well, I'm posting.
Yeah, I just had one.
I'm posting a link here, which hopefully is appearing. Oh no, it's not. Oh yes, it is. If you go to uk.osgo.org, you'll find a link to the FOSS4G conference. The FOSS4G conference UK event is running from June the 14th to June the 16th this year in Southampton. The Ordnance Survey are very kindly hosting us. It will be a gathering of software developers, software users, academics, hangers-on. I'll be there as well. 2 days of conference presentations, workshops, learning opportunities, some unconference stuff, some stand-up, and then 1 day which will be a code sprint and a hack. I'm not quite certain what we're going to be hacking, but the idea is that there'll be a hack event for some people to participate in, and a code sprint which will be helping people who've not made a commit to open source yet. A commit is when you offer up a piece of code to be added into an open source project. So people who've got some software skills, and they might be non-technical skills, so it might be documentation skills or translation skills, for example, rather than hardcore coding skills. But there's going to be one of the focuses of the code sprint will be helping people to get started on committing and contributing to an open source project. The other one will be a hack event. So those are on the 16th. So it's the 14th and the 15th is the conference. The 16th is the hack day. The address is uk.osgo.org. And then you'll find a link to the FOSS4G UK thing. And it's going to be great fun. There aren't going to be enough tickets. So if you want a ticket, you're going to have to sign up for it pretty early. A little bit of advance notice, the first batch of tickets, because we're not releasing all the tickets in one go, will go on sale at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. If you live near Southampton, you can afford it. You want to get there and get in on that. There will be a second release of tickets though, because we didn't want a load of people to be queuing up, grab all the tickets and nobody else got a chance. So we're probably release another batch of tickets in about a week's time. Fantastic fun.
It was great. I went to the last one in Nottingham. I haven't been able to get to the overseas. Really useful, and you know, if you're looking to get up to speed with what the latest developments are in open source, that is the place to be.
And thanks to our sponsors, it's as cheap as chips. However,
okay. Well, just a reminder, we're going to be the next webinar is on the 16th of May. It's the Ordnance Survey, getting more technical on the cartographic aspects. But for now, just want to say thanks again to Steven for taking the time out to talk to us today. It's been really interesting. I'm sure that, you know, if you've still got questions, you know, you can continue to submit them, and make sure that you keep track of what Steven's doing on Twitter and so on. And yeah, thanks again to the Geodata Institute for hosting us. So yeah, thanks a lot, Steven.
Bye.
Bye.